Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll call the meeting to order. It's the Environmental Commission, our December meeting. First, I'll go through roll call. And I'm going to just go through my list. Mariana Del Valle Prieto Cervantes, Timothy Randazzo, Laura Murphy.
Here.
Kristen Mole.
Present.
Michelle Overmeyer.
Here.
Great. And I am here. So our new quorum is 4 people. Want to just state the obvious here that we have a new member. Welcome, Michelle. And if you'd like, we could just take a minute for you to introduce yourself to the other commission members and myself. Just a little bit about you and your interest in joining.
Well, thank you all. It's an honor to serve alongside you on this commission. I have over 20 years of experience in environmental conservation in California, including 11 years working in this community. I work at Monterey Salinas Transit as their planning director. I describe myself as an urbanist. I love architecture and the built environment. I value compact development that's located around existing infrastructure. Transportation is one of the sectors that generates the most greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm a strong advocate for supporting alternative modes of travel. So I believe it's important for residents to have safe and viable options to walk, ride bikes, use transit. And so I'll be approaching my work on this commission from that lens of transportation and looking at energy and air quality in my service on this commission. So thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, you are bringing a unique perspective that I don't believe we have yet. And maybe actually that's great. It'll be helpful for you if we all introduce ourselves a little bit and just we all have sort of unique areas of focus and expertise. So I'll invite Laura and then Kristen just to introduce yourselves and give a little bit of background on kind of what your focus is or areas of interest as well.
Thanks, Lacey. Hi, Michelle. So glad to have you joining us. So I, in this commission, primarily have focused on pollinator habitat establishment, a big project with a lot of partners in the community. And that's generally my area of focus is habitat. My professional background is primarily in agriculture, natural resource conservation and agriculture. So I work for the Monterey County Resource Conservation District and help farmers to implement irrigation conservation practices above all, but also, again, habitat for beneficial insects, soil health practices, and things of that nature. And so in general, my service on this commission focuses on those types of areas more than anything. I think that's enough.
Yep, thanks, Laura. Kristen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Kristen Mole. I've been primarily working at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, although have branched out to a number of organizations in our community, working with some school programs with Elkhorn Slough and Toro Park, and looking at some of that kind of outreach focus, what's effective methods of outreach. I am currently working in digital engagement and social media, so some of that outreach and how to get the word out is something that hopefully I can continue to help with as we have messaging we want to get out. I feel like I'm a bit more of a generalist in terms of helping with things. I've definitely been supporting a lot of folks in terms of making presentations about our pollinator habitats and, chiming in on other folks' projects, but I definitely see some of the departed commission members who helped with the preferred packaging ordinance and Laura with the habitats here have definitely taken the lead in those areas, and I'm happy to help. I like to contribute enthusiasm.
Thanks, Kristen. And for me, so I feel like I recognized your name when I saw it in my email, and maybe that's because of just communications with my day job, which is sustainability director at CSUMB. So I don't know if you've worked with colleagues or students at CSUMB, but we do partner closely with MST. And on this commission as chair, you know, I try to just build a strong team that's active and engaged and does a lot. Which is great. And I think we do a lot. It's challenging because most of us are, well, all of us have full-time day jobs. Many of us are working mothers and have families and other responsibilities. But some of the big areas of focus that I've spent a lot of time and dedication towards have been the Priority Impact Plastic Pollution Prevention Policy, also known as the PIP4. And so that's coming towards enactment on March 1st. And so we did a lot of work just in writing that policy and getting it through the approval process, and then ensuring that we had funding and support for implementation. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that later in the agenda. The other thing, and I'm mentioning this because we'll also talk about this a little bit later, is just focusing on climate action planning. And given your sort of areas of expertise, that might be a space where you would be able to contribute a lot. So I know I reached out to you on email, but if you ever want to just meet and I can give you some more background and context to the commission, I'd be happy to. I know it's sometimes daunting to start from scratch and jump in when folks have been already sort of working and collaborating on different things for years. So definitely want to get you included and part of the fold as quickly as we can. All right, are there any items that anybody would like to add to the agenda? Okay. Are there any members of the public wishing to address the Environmental Commission on anything that is not on the agenda?
Members of the public on Zoom wishing to make public comment for items not on the agenda, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're calling in from a phone. Chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment at this time.
Thank you. We will move on to the approval of minutes. We have two dates to approve the minutes on, so I will entertain motions on either or both of them simultaneously if you'd like.
Sorry, I'm just going to double check what are our 2 ones before I get something wrong here.
It's from November 9th and September 14th.
I move that we approve the minutes from both the September and November meetings.
I
Is there-
second the motion.
All right. And because we're on Zoom, we'll do roll call vote. So I'll just go through the list again. And you can vote aye, nay, or abstain. So Mariana del Valle Prieto Cervantes, Timothy Rendazzo, Laura Murphy,
Aye.
Kristen Mole,
Aye.
Michelle Overmeyer.
I'll abstain since I was not part of those meetings.
And I vote aye, but I don't think that we can pass them because we don't have a majority voting in favor. I'm not sure, Dominique, how does that work?
The abstention goes with the majority.
Okay, great. So they can pass.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. All right, we'll move on to business items. And I'm going to share my screen. Let me just make sure I have the right piece up. Michelle, you probably didn't receive this in email, but others received this in email. Let me try to zoom out. Sorry. Hold, please. I'm gonna open it in a different format so that people can see it better. Or not. Okay, almost there. Here we go. All right. So at our last meeting, we discussed providing input and recommendations to City Council regarding development of Seaside East. So you may remember this was our first meeting after a series of community charrettes regarding development in the area east of General Jim Moore. And we discussed some of the opportunities and challenges that come along with development of that space. So we sent this letter out for review and approval over email, but we didn't get any responses. So I asked Beth to put this on the agenda so that we could review and then vote on it at this meeting. So what it discusses, I'll just briefly review it and then maybe I'll give you a moment to read over it yourselves. And can I put things in the chat? Am I allowed to do that? No?
Chat is disabled since it becomes a part of the public record, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. Didn't think so. So
I have access to my own copy of it from when I reviewed it earlier.
okay.
It's also, I can access it from the city's website.
Okay.
From for
On
tonight's
the
meeting.
agenda. Okay. Just so that you can read it at your own pace. That makes it a little bit easier than me trying to keep up with your pace of reading. So it discusses the benefits of establishing a sustainability framework to guide that development. So some of the benefits of developing that framework are ensuring various interests are included and providing transparency and accountability. I think this is really important, especially when we know that this project will take a long time and there will be changes in staff personnel, there will be changes in elected officials. It's just the nature of communities. And so if we have a guiding framework, that will stay with the community through those changes. And I think there are and there were some really strong feelings and visions for what could happen in that space, and developing a framework to help guide us really helps us build a foundation for a shared vision as a community. And so this document reviews 3 different frameworks: LEAD for neighborhood development, living community challenge, and eco villages. And it talks a little bit about each of those and some of the pros and cons, but ultimately makes the recommendation for the use of the living community challenge. It has the guidance and support of Living Future Institute, similar to how the U.S. Green Business or Green Building Council supports LEAD. It goes a bit beyond LEAD, and one of the things that I think is really nice in the ways that it goes beyond LEAD is in the areas of equity and beauty and health and happiness, which are important parts of a community. So that's the gist of it. You can skim it on your own or let me know if you have any questions at this point.
I was just curious if it was worth it to hold space in this email to say that if, you know, the Living Community Challenge seemed more ambitious than someone was willing to take on, if something a little simpler like LEAD would still be a step up. I don't know if that's supposed to be assumed by the fact that we ask for a framework in general. I agree with everything here. I'm just curious if we can add a, like, really, even if you don't like this one, we should definitely have a framework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can add some language around that for sure. Can do that.
Otherwise, this is pretty much in line with the discussion we had when we looked at the standards in the first place, and I continue to agree with it and be excited by it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Just that I'm supportive of this and I appreciate you taking the initiative. Thanks, Lacey.
Yeah. I'm going to stop share and open it up for public comment. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment on this, you can do so now.
Members of the public can use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're calling in from a phone to make public comment on this item. No members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment.
Okay. In that case, if anybody would like to make a motion, we can motion on this item.
It's a good way to make a motion to include some language to encourage the use of any framework, even if we're not up to the particular challenge that we like the best.
Just say I motion, you can motion to approve with the amendment to incorporate.
I'd like to motion to approve the letter drafted with the amendment that we add some language to encourage the adoption of any framework in addition to which one we prefer.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I'll go through roll call vote. Mariana Del Valle, Prieto Cervantes, Timothy Randazzo, Laura Murphy,
Aye.
Kristen Mole,
Aye.
Michelle Overmeyer,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. So we will send that letter as amended. Thank you. Moving on to item B on our agenda, wanted to provide an update to you all. We held our kickoff meeting with Environmental Innovations, who was the consultant that was awarded the contract to implement the PIP4 policy. And that initial meeting was comprised of representatives from the Environmental Commission. Myself and Mariana were there. Beth was there, as well as Ernesto from Seaside Communications, the team from Environmental Innovations, and then a handful of community partners. So folks from Green Waste and the Monterey One Water, Save Our Shores. I can't remember everybody. Folks from the Plastics Coalition, representative from the aquarium. And so it was very much city consultant and community members that were present. And we talked a lot about just what will be happening over the next few months before the implementation at the beginning of March. And they shared some ideas for logos, which were shared with Laura and Kristen, I believe. Michelle, I don't know that they wouldn't have been sent to you yet because you weren't sworn in at the time, but the general consensus based on feedback that we received during the meeting and comments received from the email that was sent out was to go with the first option with some changes for language, which I think you provided. And I will just share my screen again so you all can see what these are and what we're talking about. So these will basically be the messaging for the campaign, for the outreach campaign. And for all of these, they gave us them in English, but Spanish and possibly other language will also be included. So turn the tide on plastic. Oh, that scrolled fast, sorry. Stick a fork in plastic pollution. Seaside is stumping out plastic. Turn the tide on plastic. And then the last option. Oh, this is the last option, sorry. So I don't know if anybody wants to share their thoughts or reflections. Laura and Kristen, I know both of you provided comments over email, and those were shared with the consultant team.
The version I saw only had 2 in it, not all of these. Were
Oh,
these
really?
were these added later, or were the other ones already trimmed out before they sent it to us for comment?
They were probably trimmed out.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Michelle, do you have any thoughts?
So did you say this one is the one that was selected?
Yeah, yeah. Partly for its simplicity, the broadness of it. So some of the other ones had specific focus on like plastic utensils and the imaging or things like that. And because the policy includes more than just to go wear, it includes balloons and styrofoam and things like that. We thought this would capture more of that broad aspect of the policy. They liked the references to the ocean, sort of shifting directions.
And so this will be on all of the city's public information on the policy that's going into effect?
Correct.
Okay.
So unless there's major concerns that are raised right now, my main interest is just making a decision on something, because we had an email today that said if we don't make a decision soon, it's going to affect the whole timeline. So they're trying to get the website up and all the other materials sort of generated. So yeah, I don't know that we need to vote on this one. I just wanted to share and give an opportunity for feedback that folks might then want to share with the consultants. Kristen.
Since I already submitted my feedback in email, just a short version of it here. I also selected this one, but I suggested rather than a direct translation of it into Spanish, a fresh phrase in Spanish. And I was just wondering if we had that I like this visually. I like the English version of this, but a direct translation doesn't make sense. And I'd sent some feedback about some options for the Spanish version as opposed to the Spanish translation.
Yep, we shared that. And I think your suggestion was like contra plástico or something to that effect, rather than the direct translation. So I shared that verbatim.
Great. Okay.
All right. So thanks for providing that feedback. And then other sort of items that they're progressing with. So they decided to build a Seaside webpage rather than sort of a separate standalone page that the consultants would manage. They're going to actually build it into Seaside's website. So they're developing and gathering all the content for that. And there'll probably be a main landing page and then sort of 2 directions. So one for businesses and then one for general public to get information and frequently asked questions, resources, etc. One thing that I continually like to reiterate with this policy is that, you know, we wrote it and we're hoping to continue to push reusables instead of plastic. Compostables, yes, are in most cases better than plastic, but that's still not a solution, right? So we want to look at the final end game rather than another step that still has a lot of challenges mixed in with it, which compostable ware does still have a lot of challenges mixed in with it. So that will be part of the effort, and we will probably need a lot of commission support to help get the word out and to encourage people to sort of break that stigma that's sometimes associated with bringing reusables or using reusables. So as the campaign progresses, we'll probably have more specific action or support that the commission can provide. keep your ears open for that. I'm hoping to invite the consultants to our January or February meeting so we can get a more in-depth update. Any public comment on that item before we move on to item C?
Members of the public, please use the raise your hand or dial *9 if you're calling in from a phone. Chair, I do have one person who has indicated they wish to speak. Diane Nielsen, you now have the floor to make your public comment.
Hi, I just wanted to let the commissioners know that I do support the logo they're leaning to and the phrase "turn the tide." That's really good, and it's active too. It's a nice phrase. But what I don't, could you tell me what you mean by changing it into Spanish translation? What the issue is with that?
Yeah, Kristen.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Continue.
And those are my only comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Kristen, do you want to respond to that, or I can?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you so much for asking, Diane. This is a case of wordplay. And in the case of the wordplay, if you were to directly translate each word into Spanish, wouldn't have the same meaning. So I think the literal translation would be like contra la marea, which doesn't sound like it makes any sense. Like it doesn't have the same, like turning the tide doesn't have the same connotation in Spanish. It's not an idiom. And so if you wanted to make it have the same meaning, then like the recommendation I said was like, as opposed to literally translating like against the tide, it would be contra el plástico, which would be like against the plastic. So the idea is that we're doing some fun wordplay, which is fun and clever, but we have a multilingual audience. So we want to recognize that that wordplay doesn't need to be directly translated. We can instead create something that has specific meaning in Spanish.
Thanks, Kristen. Any other public comment on this item?
No other members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment.
Great, thanks, Dominique. We'll move on to item C, and this is in regards to the climate action plan. I'll be honest, like I've struggled a little bit with just getting this off the ground. You'll remember we had about $100,000, I believe, maybe a little bit more allocated to development of a climate action plan in the city's last budget. And most of, frankly, my energy and attention has been going towards getting the consultants hired and doing all of that for the plastics policy. And I've tried to sort of stay abreast of what's happening and send, some reminders about climate action planning. And I'd reached out to the staff person who was identified to be like the primary point of contact. But she was a new staff person, and she actually ended up leaving the city in the beginning of October. And so I was kind of put back at square one around like, okay, how do we get this moving? And one of the tricky things is really identifying the scope. And, there's a lot of different directions that a climate action plan can take. And the city and city council will probably need to, should, and want to weigh in on that scope, because it could be something like a sustainability plan where it incorporates more than just climate action plan. It might include elements of habitat or sustainable procurement. Whereas a climate action plan could be more informal, or it could be an approved CEQA document that is then used for future project mitigation. And all of those have different impacts on the city. The last one probably having the most significant impact. So what we're trying, Beth and I had a talk earlier this month and sort of both agreed to do just a little bit of research. So I've reached out to a couple of just like local planning firms, other cities, people who have done a climate action plan, to really get an understanding of like, these are the options and this is what the impact will be for the city. I was hoping somebody maybe had already done some of that work and just has something that then I can share, but I haven't found anything yet. So still have a couple people to reach out to, but and then Beth was also going to be doing some outreach to folks to invite them to a study session to just with council to better understand what our options are and what we want the scope of this plan to take. And then I think we can start sort of piecing together a strategy. But we just need to get over that first hurdle to keep us moving. So does anybody have any questions or thoughts on that? Yeah, Kristen.
I seem to recall Beth sent out a document around September or October, which included a forward from the city of Watsonville that was talking about what they had learned with their consultants and was basically saying, hey, you could save a bunch of money and just take our document and use that as a jumping off point. And we are more than happy to do so. And a lot of this should be relevant to your community as well. And I was curious if that is part of what you were thinking about, and if something that there was anything there you can make use of in terms of has anyone done this already?
Well, people have done it already. I think in terms of where we can piggyback the most, my thought first goes to the county of Monterey, who they're in their climate action planning process currently, and have been collecting information and gathering data. So Omri from Ambeg and Ashley from the county were two that we wanted to invite to this study session. And then the city of Watsonville is on my list of people to call to better understand the scopes of the plans. But yeah, where we can take stuff and have some efficiency, I'm all for it. Yeah. Michelle. Oh, you're on your speaker. You're on mute still.
You can't hear me when I'm muted.
Yeah.
You mentioned the city has $100,000 in the budget for this. Is there grant money as part of this? And I'm wondering if there might be any restrictions or direction on how to spend it.
No, it was just a budget allocation from our budget, from the city's budget.
General funds. Okay.
Mhm.
City of Monterey prepared a resiliency plan, which might overlap a little bit, but maybe separate. And then Caltrans does the sustainability planning grants every year. And they might have some past awards that we could look at for completed projects to get ideas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Does anybody want to help with this particular aspect? And by helping, I mean, maybe attending the study session, maybe reaching out to a couple of folks to gather information and provide kind of an analysis. And I don't know if we're at the point of a recommendation yet, but information to council and help them work through what may become a recommendation.
I'd be happy to help.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll get you tied in and I'll get Beth connected with that too. Okay, any public comments on the climate action plan conversation?
Members of the public, you can raise your hand or dial *9 if you're calling in from a phone for public comment on this item. Chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment at this time.
Thanks, Dominique. All right, we'll move on to business item D, which is another update on the Blue Zones collaboration. So you may remember at our last meeting, we had Tanya Roos from Blue Zones come and present. And one of the outcomes from that meeting was to discuss ways to collaborate on litter collection. And we had the first event last Saturday that happened during the park workday at Lincoln Cunningham. And they got a few good bags, I think, collected and had a great time. We had a really great turnout for that workday in general. Laura might speak more to that, but 20 maybe people working in the garden or more, working on the planting site and doing the litter collection. So that was really, really wonderful and just in time for the rain. Both to collect the litter and to get the plants in the ground. The next event, I was going to look this
January
up before the
15th.
meeting. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Will be January 15th, and I think that will be either around Beta or
Durant Park.
Durant. And I do know just from personal experience of walking around that area that there is a much higher level of litter on the streets there. So I'm hoping to do even more outreach and try to get more people to come to that event. I would love to have like 40 or 50 people, and then we can just be like an octopus and spread the little tentacles out into the neighborhood and have people working in the park and have people doing some litter collection. So that partnership and the outcomes from their presentation and that meeting have been moving forward, and I think it's really great. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Laura.
I do. Thank you, Lacey.
Yeah.
But yes, it was very positive, and we did have excellent turnout. Some new people that came just for gardening, and then of course the people that came for the Blue Zones promoted litter cleanup. So very pleased and very much looking forward to our next opportunity in January. Also, I had a conversation with Tanya about a few other items around food access. And so some discussion about the Seaside Farmers Market, the possibility of exploring alternatives to a farmers market, such as a mobile market. Also touched on the theme of community gardens, something that kind of keeps coming up in various circles, especially around the park work. There's definitely interest, but whether or not there's enough interest to sustain an effort and leadership around that. She indicated an interest on Blue Zone's part to explore that possibility. And so those are just threads of conversation that we shared, and there's nothing official going anywhere at this point in time, but I wanted to bring that back to the commission for continued consideration. That something might develop in those areas as well. That's all.
Would that be at a specific park, or you just haven't gotten there?
We're not there. I mean, we all know that there are some community garden sort of nascent efforts happening around Havana Solis, whatever's happening at Capra.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly have my hands in, but can't call it a community garden. It's sort of a guerrilla garden, but some places where things of that nature are, there's interest and some things developing, but no, there's no discussion about anything formal. But Blue Zones would be interested in exploring, engaging actual community interest as far as that being, a viable project with leadership within the community and enough individuals who would benefit from such a program to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Any questions on that item? Any comments or questions from the public? Kristen.
I
Right.
thought of a question after the fact. Since we had
Okay.
such a good turnout with the Blue Zones folks with our community work day, um, I feel like because we have some nascent community gardens, we've had folks approach us about, some of the raised bed boxes that are already in place, and were there other things that we could do to support them? We've had community members come and speak to this commission about that. I wonder if we can connect some of those people, the members of the public who were talking about the community gardening they're doing in our parks, with the Blue Zones folks. Since that went well, maybe there's some way we can just help the two of them meet up, since they may not know about the other.
Yeah,
That's all I've got right now.
I would think that Tanya would be open to receiving communication from anyone who's excited. Just reach out, say something, tell Blue Zones you're into it. She hasn't developed at this point any formal outreach on that, but yes, making those connections, if anyone approaches you, I think is worth doing at this stage.
Okay, I'll go back to public comment if there's anyone from the public that wants to comment on this item.
Members of the public, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9. Chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment on this item.
Okay. We'll move on to reports from commissioners. Laura, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just a reminder that we have an official break from our park work days on the 25th, but I will be with a small crew at Beta Park for anybody that is looking for some outdoor time that Saturday. And then we are on for an official volunteer work day with FOSFA on New Year's Day. So January 1st, also at Beta Park. I also I've indicated before that through the Resource Conservation District where I'm employed, we have looked at opportunities for grants that might support park work and or community garden work. So continuing the theme, there is such an opportunity available that we will be developing an application for, and that would be awarded if we were successful in potentially April, and it would be a one-year project. And so the focus of that will be the pollinator habitat development, as well as potentially community gardens. And so I will be working on the concept development with the same partners, and also including Blue Zones project, but FOSFA, Sustainable Seaside, and the others who have already been involved in the pollinator habitat program. So that's just for your information at this stage.
Great, thanks. The only other report that I wanted to mention was there's a plastics coalition that meets regularly, and at their last meeting they had a presentation, and I had to leave halfway through, so I was able to stay for the presentation but not the discussion afterwards. So the presentation was around developing sort of teams to communicate on the new regulations regarding 1383. And for those, just as a reminder, 1383 is the compost collection legislation, and on January 1st, it goes into effect for the residential compost collection, and our waste haulers and materials recovery facilities will be beginning to work on that implementation. I think, it won't be a hard change on January 1st, but slowly rolling out these new systems. And for Seaside, the system will be that compost collection happens in yard waste bins. So home, like roll-off yard waste bins. And they can collect food waste, but they are not taking compostable ware or uncooked meat in those systems. And so one of the avenues that they're proposing to help the community members sort of know and become aware about these changes and how to change behavior accordingly is to have sort of small outreach sessions. So there might be one or two people that meet with different groups that they're a part of, whether that's a church group, a group like ours, or a youth group. It could really be anything. It could be a neighborhood. It could be a couple of your friends. and just have little information sessions. And so, like I said, I didn't get to hear all of the discussion around that, but I just wanted to share that with you so that you were aware that some of this was happening, and it might be an opportunity for us to think about, you know, how to help support that outreach and communication. Laura and I were talking earlier, and you know, one of the things that popped into my mind was after a work day, just have a little 15-minute extra session at the end of a workday and bring some bins and sort of go over the new requirements and what to do or not to do. So just planting that little seed in the back of your mind so that you're aware of it, and we'll probably have more discussion on that as implementation rolls out. And I don't think Kristen or Michelle, you would have any reports, correct? And Beth is out, so I'm guessing Rick won't chime in with any reports because there's not much to chime in on. So with that, we will adjourn for one of our shortest meetings ever, I think. Under an hour is very impressive for this group. Don't get scared, Michelle. Usually it's like 7-ish that we wrap up. we don't go till midnight like council and some other groups. We're not that bad. So our next meeting will be January 11th, right before the January 15th workday. So that'll be good timing. And I wish you all a wonderful holiday season. Rest up, spend time with those you love, and regenerate your souls. Refill your cups. And thank you again all so much for the work you do. To this commission, thank you to staff, Rick and Dominique. You guys are awesome. Thanks to Beth, who's not here. And welcome again, Michelle. We're so happy to have you with us. Look forward to working with you.